Alright, we're back in the saddle. I promised you 5 more things right and wrong with a bunch of different games. And the first up on our list is Marvel's Spider-Man for the PS4. Now, this game is fantastic. I love it. I personally put it up there with the Arkham games in terms of quality. It is just an amazing superhero game that I think games will really try to riff off of for a long time to come. Now, what did this game do that made it so special? There were so many different things that this game really capitalized on and just did the best job it possibly could do with, and one of those things was the traversal. The world traversal and movement is just incredible in this game. As Spider-Man, you will effortlessly run up the side of buildings, wall crawl, vault over surfaces, you will parkour across rooftops, you can swing across the city in a really fluid way. I would argue this is the most fluid this has felt since the PS2 Xbox original Spider-Man 2, based off the Raimi movies, that game. Like, this is an incredible traversal system. Even the fact that when you're going around a corner, you can basically steer yourself around that building to pull yourself in a new direction without even doing much anything. Like, it is so intuitive. And they did such a great job being able to make you feel like you're Spider-Man. The whole thing that they said in the old Spider-Man 2 for PS2, I believe it was New York is your playground, or take New York for a spin. They used to have little, catchphrases like that. You really feel it here. You feel like you're Spider-Man in this massive sprawling world, and you can do anything that Spider-Man could do. They make you feel so much like a superhero. It's just an incredible feeling, and I remember picking this game up. I think I just spent like the first 10 minutes web swinging around once I got into the open world without even doing much before I was like, oh yeah, there's a game here. And I started to progress through the game after that. It really just sweeps you off your feet and makes getting from point A to point B not at all a chore. The second thing that I absolutely love about this game is the combat. It is so fluid. Honestly, again, I would put it up there with Batman Arkham. And I know it's weird to make comparisons here, but obviously there were some inspirations sort of, after the years of Arkham being made with Insomniac going into this and looking at other superhero games out in the world and saying like, what are they doing good? How do we do our own thing with that? How do we make this just as good as that thing? Obviously there was some influence on this game from other like really prominent superhero games like Arkham. And I think the combat is one of the places you see that. It's really interesting. It's not button mashy. It's sort of that same rhythm-y, style where Arkham succeeds at. It's really hard to explain because you essentially are punching and you need to know like, okay, this is the sort of enemy I need to dive under, get behind, hit him from behind. This is the sort of enemy I need to dodge first or use a web grenade or impact web and then hit. I knock this sort of guy into the air. There's a lot of different patterns to remember, but it feels so fluid. The one thing I will say is that with how many gadgets there are, I would argue this combat is almost easier. And I'm sure that to some people it's not, but the fact that you can heal on the go as you build up your combo meter, and even that you can just switch effortlessly into so many gadgets that actually can incapacitate entire groups of enemies, once in a while it makes you feel OP, but that's Spider-Man. I mean, this is a guy with superpowers that really is OP when he's taking down just normal people. So it never felt bad to me. I'm not sure if that in any way will show up on a things it did wrong list. The fact that sometimes there's a lack of challenge. I don't know. I'll, have to look at that as I'm making that. But I overwhelmingly was so impressed with the combat. It just felt unreal. The third thing is actually a story element, and I'm not going to the end of the game here with this. But I think that they really found a way to spin the Peter and Mary Jane relationship. Now, I don't want to say it's a played out relationship in the comics, but they just keep going back and forth on the will they, won't they. And there's a little bit of that in here for sure, like in terms of them starting out on sort of rocky ground relationships-wise. But Mary Jane doesn't feel two-dimensional. That's one of my biggest complaints about her in a lot of the older comics, is that they don't really go heavily into detail of the characterization of MJ. Sometimes they do, and when they do that, it's actually interesting, but a lot of times she almost ends up being just like a side, not as important character, And I think that there are characters that are like that are totally fine. And there's even times with MJ where you can do that and it's like, yeah, who cares? Like, she's just there. But I think that to actually make the player care about MJ and think like, oh, that's a person like Peter Parker is. It was a smart idea. They put you in her shoes once in a while. They also make it like so she's actually capable and likable. And I know she's been criticized a little bit for being a lot like a Lois Lane type, but I think having her step into that role did add more of a personality to the character than just being someone who is in danger all the time and is almost a pain. Like, you're just annoyed, like, oh, I got to save MJ again. It's just kind of an obnoxious MacGuffin that shows up in a lot of Spider-Man games and other Spider-Man media. And so to sort of like move kind of past that while also not making her super powered, it was nice to see. It made you actually feel like you had sort of a partner and not just a liability on your hands at all times that she was on the screen.
You're lucky to be alive.
Says the guy I saved 5 minutes ago. Listen, whoever these masked guys are, they're after this file. But I'll never get it out of here while the place is swarming with them.
Right. Okay, you hide back there. I take out the bad guys. You make a break when it's clear.
Sounds like a plan.
The fourth thing that I was also a huge fan of was actually Miles Morales. Now, I have gone on record, I'm sure in the past, I think in some Spider-Man stuff, saying I didn't love Miles Morales. I don't hate him though. It seems like there's sort of this divide in a lot of the Spider-Man community where there's just Miles, like hardcore Miles fans. Like, oh man, he's the best, he's awesome, best new character in Marvel in the last decade. Then there's like there's nothing special about him, he's boring, why do you like him crowd. I've always sort of fallen in the middle on that. Like, there's times when Miles Morales is interesting, I think, in Bendis's run, but I don't think he's that interesting ever. And I didn't hate him either. I just thought of him as kind of like he's fine, he's okay. That's really it. And this game, along with Sony's movie Into the Spider-Verse, they both in different ways are able to make Miles Morales feel like a fully fleshed out person. He does have his own origin story that sort of mirrors Peter Parker's, but not fully. And he develops this relationship and friendship with Peter over the course of the game that makes you actually think of Miles as like a protege or a friend or someone who matters to the game's story without stealing the center spotlight and without it becoming Miles Morales the video game. I think that was something important to do, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with this character in the future of this series, because I am sure there will be more Insomniac Marvel Spider-Man games.
I just wanted to say, I know what you're going through. That's what you were gonna say, right? Or it all gets easier with time. Or don't worry. It's part of God's plan. I'm sorry. I was just trying to help. I know.
The final of the 5 things is actually something that has been widely debated back and forth in terms of, is this a good thing or is it not? And we've seen that sort of, just to pull, I guess, the pop culture right now. You can see that in the Sonic trailer, as far as fans were recommending things like, oh, this is bad, change this, and then the company comes back and changes it, and there's a lot of people like, yeah, we did it, that's awesome, it looks great. And then there's people like, oh, I don't know if you should have caved to that. And that, with Spider-Man, is actually listening to the fans. It's something I will always appreciate. I love it as long as it's not like a, I don't know, ridiculously over the top, like, you're getting death threats sent to a company so that they will change something. As long as it's not something extreme like that, I am literally always for listening to the fans. Because I think that a lot of the times, fans of properties care as much or more about the characters that they are interested in as the actual people who are working on that property. Now, I know that it's the property of the people who are working on it or they're licensing it, but essentially, when you look at a character like Spider-Man, is he owned by Marvel legally? Yes, but culturally, he's kind of owned by everybody. Like, everybody has a vested interest in Spider-Man. He is a cultural icon. So I think it was really important for Insomniac to be able to, like, put down some of their pride. I don't even know if they have any, but they're human, so I would assume they do. To sort of, like, pull it back and be like, okay, well, what do the fans want to see? They found ways online to gauge fan interest in different suits and ideas that they wanted to see. And this really culminated, in my opinion, with the actual inclusion of the original Raimi trilogy suit from Sony's original Spider-Man trilogy in the games. I think that's where we really saw, like, wow, they are really listening to fan feedback and what fans want to see. That was something that was asked for forever. They didn't have to put it in the game. They didn't have anything to gain by putting it in the game because it was a free update. They just did that for the fans. They did a lot of free little updates of suits and things from even, like, obviously the Raimi trilogy, you know, Spider-Man Far From Home got a couple suits added in for free. And then that's not to mention the paid DLC that obviously wasn't free. But the fact that you were even getting free suit add-ons to this game just for fun, just like a, hey, here you go, here's a freebie, we hope you're still enjoying our game, have fun out in the sandbox of New York. That was such a goodwill move from this company. I love to death when I see things like that from companies, like game companies, comics companies, whatever, actually listening to what the fans want to see and implementing it into the game. It's such great behavior, and it really makes me want to keep supporting the franchise when I see behavior like that. So hey, these are my 5 things that I think Marvel's Spider-Man did extremely well. Just like some of the other 5 things with the Arkham games, I might eventually circle back around to this with a 5 more things right and wrong after I, you know, do the 5 things wrong and then do some other games, because there's just so much to talk about with this game. It is incredible. It's mind-blowing. The world is huge. Everything is just wow. It blows me away every time I play it, and I hope that if you haven't played this game, that you will check it out. I think even if you're not a fan of Spider-Man, it definitely is a good gateway into the fandom. So hey, let me know what you're thinking in the comments down below. What 5 things did you love about this game? What things did you not like about the game? What were your opinions on it overall? And how do you think it compares to the Arkham series, which we talk about a lot on this channel? I would love to hear that from you. Hey, please check out the Reddit, join the community. We love having you. Check out the Patreon if you want to find a more direct way to support what I'm doing over on the channel, you know, or just, hey, hang out in the comments, have a laugh, and we'll have some fun together. Appreciate you. Have a fantastic day. You're awesome.